My name's Frank Muth. I'm the program manager for Saudi Army National Guard. I'm honored to be able to be here today to represent a phenomenal organization, both in the program office, but also in the Saudi Army National Guard forces. And today they are represented by my dear friend, who I also call a brother, Major General Rashid, who leads the Sang Army Aviation. General Rashid, thank you very much for coming today. So, building aviation capability from the ground up. Think back, 2008 was the first time that aviation was thought of in the Saudi Army National Guard in terms of a concept. What we want to do today is take about 25 minutes and then open it up to any questions and walk you through from 2008 on, one, how you build a requirement, and then once you identify that requirement, how you fulfill that requirement with stuff, if I could use General Gaylor's term, and then after that, how you train in that stuff, and then how you become expeditionary, or at least you employ that stuff. And we want to walk through all of that process. Now, to understand that is to also understand what the Program Management Office is. So, in 1973, the King of Saudi Arabia came to our government, to the Secretary of Defense, and asked for an office to be stood up, the Program Management of Saudi Army National Guard, to help do 4 missions for the Saudi Army National Guard. 1, conduct modernization, so think FMS, but also key to that is train, advise, and assist. Because you can have good kit, but unless you are able to train on it and maintain it, it kind of, it doesn't serve a purpose. So from that point forward, we stood up our program office, and it started as a fledgling organization, and now we are today 233 people that are both military, about 130, and then the rest are filled by GS employees, and they provide, again, that oversight. And then when I say oversight, we consider ourselves a mini Pentagon, because it's the program management, the POM build, the budget build. We're also TRADOC, because we do doctrine. We're a FORCECOM, because it's operational. All right. Then we're also ASALT, because we follow through with FMS and do all the program management. And then again, it's all encompassed with training, advising, assist. And we couldn't be successful unless we are embedded with our dear partners within the Saudi Army National Guard. Phenomenal bunch of soldiers that are dedicated to protecting the realm and the royal family. And we work hand in hand every day down to the battalion level with oversight of the organization as a whole. And it's both aviation, which we're going to focus on today, but it's not just that. It's ground maneuver forces also. Now, with our organization, we also have the Vanel Corporation. All right, they are the contract trainers that also enhance what our training capability is that we provide by our uniformed personnel. They take it all the way down to the company level, into the tactical, and there's about 1,000 of the contractors involved across the board in the training. So that's our organization, and that's kind of the history of what we do. All right, but let's get after some of this stuff and talk about how you create an aviation force from the ground up. So here's our agenda slide. Here's what we're going to really get into is, where have we been, where are we today, and where are we going to go into the future? And again, there is no error in between ourselves and the soldiers in the National Guard in terms of working together every day. And again, I'm honored that they're here to be with us on this great day. If you look at the bottom there, 2008, okay? General Rashid was one of the first ones that came up with this great idea, along with how do we take an aviation force that doesn't exist and build it up. And from there, in 2013, they started their construction in Cosmolan, that we're building right now, the airfield, which is complete. And then they took their possession of the first 5D MD-530s that they do their training on. And the ultimate goal is working up to right now with their first brigade being fielded with UH-60 Mike models, AH-64 Echo models, and then in May, we'll take possession of the first AH-6I Little Birds, the first country in the world to take and purchase this aircraft. We've always had the MLB with the Special Forces and the AH-6, but not the I. And the unique aspect of the I is the fact that the cockpit is exactly compatible with the AH-64 Echo. The MFDs are the same, the buttons are the same, the information the same. So you can imagine in translating the information flow and the understanding and the training is much easier. The end state, of course, is through 2019 and 2023 is to build out the rest of the brigades and then depending on where the government would like to put them in strategic locations to help support their mission, again, which is securing the internal security and protection of the royal family. Slide. So, there's your timeline that we went over, but how do you start and build a requirement? This is Frank Muth's slide, which means it's really basic, it's simple. I'm kind of like, sometimes it takes a brick or two to hit me to get it, but I look at it this way. When you're trying to build a requirement, the first thing you want to understand is, what is the national strategy? What is the intent of that force? All right? And once you've identified what your national security requirements are, you also have to compare it to what the threat is. All right? And what you're trying to address in terms of the threat. All right? Because all of this is going to drive you to what you're going to ultimately decide in is your force structure, your size, and what you need to buy to be able to fulfill those requirements. So understand what the national strategy is, what the threat is, and let's face it, we do it in the Pentagon every day. You can have a national security strategy, and you can identify a threat and the gaps, but the budget has to be able to support that, and that's always the case. So, you've got to be informed by what the resources are. And then after that, what is the mission? Because this will inform what type of aircraft you would end up buying. Because if your mission is not to do an attack of any sort or armed reconnaissance, and it's just to move personnel from point A to point B, you don't have to worry about 64s or any type of gunship. You would look more towards a lift aircraft. So all of those, the national security, the threat, the budget, and the mission, help to inform what missions are going to be required. And if you look at your mission and you said it's attack, it's reconnaissance, it's security, think cavalry-type missions, route area zone, okay, screen, guard, and cover, all those old terms. And then air assault, air movement, and also medevac. Now, you see my scale to the right. All of that stuff is critical, but the two areas that you've got to balance are money and time. So they always say, we want it quicker, but when you want it quicker, sometimes it drives cost up. All right, so if you have a good planned out timeline, you can save a lot of money that way, and you can still meet your requirements. And then after all of that, that's what you end up determining what you need to buy. So based all of that, it was determined that the AH-64 met the requirements that were identified through the column on the left, and the AH-6ID, or the AH-6I, met the requirements for the armed reconnaissance, and the Mike model met the requirements for the air assault and the air movement. So after you determine what you need to buy, then it gets into, and this is where the program management office is involved, hand in hand with the leadership within the National Guard, is developing the training plan. Because as we all know, you can have the best kit in the world, but if you're not just current, but you have to be proficient, then it's not doing you any good. So you have to make sure that that training plan is nested and all the requirements that you've set down are kind of moving forward together. And then it gets into the program execution. All right, and here, so it really started conceptually in 2008. 18 months ago, I think actually now 20 months ago, there were no aircraft in the Saudi National Guard. Yet now they are getting ready to finish their first brigade that is going to be, in terms of fielded. That's a lot to do in 20 months. And simultaneously of receiving those aircraft and establishing maintenance for those aircraft and life cycle sustainment, life cycle maintenance, you also have the training aspect. Lastly, after that, the program execution, then you get into sustainment, and then as soon as we all know in the process of any type of procurement, at some point, depending on how long it is, if it's a 5 or a 10-year model, at some point you have to go back in and touch the first group that you've got because technology changes, and you have to continue to make sure you have kept updated in the modernization world. Slide. So, this is the initial concept. Let's just say this is concept, but we're not there yet. But the whole concept was 3 operational brigades and a training brigade. And I'll get into a little bit talking about the training brigade, where it's going to operate. And we're looking at that as not just a mini Fort Rucker, but a mini Fort Eustis. So it's an area where you both do your basic training, but you also do advanced training, and you do your engine qualification for your soldiers, hydraulics, electronics, rotor systems, and all of that. Your basic brigade is made up of an assault battalion, an attack battalion. Attack battalion is a mix of your AH-64 and your AH-6I. And then, of course, you can't go anywhere in aviation without your aviation support battalion. Maintenance is critical, as we know. Slide. So with that, as you're developing your structure, here's where we in the program office try to help the Saudi National Guard move out in both the acquiring the aircraft, doing the training, and then conducting the program management. And it gets down to these areas. And this is where I talked to you about the program office is very similar to those three areas of FORSCOM, TRADOC, the Pentagon, and also ASALT. It's the manning part. You've got to make sure that you're recruiting the right personnel for these jobs. And I'll tell you, there's a long line to get into this aviation organization. There's a great deal of pride, a great deal of honor, and they are individually interviewed before they're allowed to enter the organization. And it's quite an honor to be able to be part of this organization. After that, it's the training and the doctrine. So it's, as you work through, or as we work through the training and going through the basic type training, or now working towards, and we're working towards actually doing the Mike model and the Echo model transition in country. That'll be the first country that's ever been able to do that on site. And we got approval to do that, and we're working towards that. And again, that helps everybody in terms of relieves a little stress at Fort Rucker, but allows for what we call Saudiization, a lot of the training to stay within the country. Additionally, the services, without the service, I'll lump the three down, the services, equipping, and facilities. You've got to have all of these wired, and they have to support what your end state is. Because anytime I'll go into some facilities and the construction has to take place, because it all has to be mapped out. You have to have the facilities before you receive your equipment. You have to have the service contracts before you receive your equipment. All of that has to be in place. So our lines of effort across the board are manning, training, doctrine, services, equipping, and facilities. Slide, please. So I was very surprised when I took over this job 10 months ago about how much construction's going on. And I'll just use one of the projects that is taking place right now it's Durab. It's north of Riyadh, or not north, but northeast. That construction's about 43% complete. It is an absolutely phenomenal facility. It's both got, we're looking at a stage field, those familiar with Fort Rucker. We've got 4 lanes that are going to be operational instead of just a single lane that allow for increase the amount of training. But the way we've broken this down, or the way the design has been for the complex, is it's segmented based on if you're going to be complexed with both the training in the H-64, segmented in terms of the buildings, the simulators, the classrooms, and then if you're a H-6I, or if you're a UH-60, but also it talks about the, this is where we're going to put the engines for the engine mechanics to learn how to break those things down and how to fix those. So all of that is out in the construction right now, and we expect probably in the next 18 to 2 years that thing will be complete. And it's a phenomenal facility. But again, did not realize how much construction was involved in a lot of what we're doing. Slide. Now, once we talked before about identifying the national security issues, and you're identifying what you're trying to meet and the threat and all of that, and you go into what you're going to buy, it gets to the foreign military sales. And you put this slide up, and I think a lot of people look at this slide, and I went through the course last year before I was allowed to take the job in Dayton, Ohio. Great course, the DISAM course. And this is the school solution. And I'll just tell you, if the FMS program, the benefit of that, it's a total package. And what we have found in terms of the aircraft, when you do the FMS, it's not just about buying the aircraft. It's about everything that comes with it that the program manager offers. And Alex Alejo is our program manager for the for the program office for the aviation. He is a acquisition officer, and he's an Apache pilot. So that knowledge, he's helping husband through the entire process of receiving those aircraft and then providing all of the support. And when I say all the support, it's all of that maintenance that goes with aviation, which you have to have in place for it to be successful. The challenge with a lot of folks out there, they find the FMS process cumbersome and slow. It may be at times, but I will tell you the end state is you're going to get ultimately both a better product and you're going to get much better support. Now, I have taken this slide and made it into, again, something that Frank Muth would understand. So slide, please. Okay, so country X wants to submit a letter of requirement that goes usually to the program or ASALT office. They do pricing and availability. They will help craft the letter of both offer and acceptance, send it back to country X. Country X signs letter of offer and acceptance, and then it starts. Now that looks really easy, but there's lots of processes through DSCA, through Congress, and the notification that needs to take place, and that can take up to 2 to 3 or 4 years sometimes. But if you're really going to boil it down to the basic stuff that's required, here's what it is. And the key is, whatever country it is, they just have to know what they want. And if they do and they want to go after this type of product, and they know it, then it makes the process much easier. Slide. Here are the benefits. It's instantaneous program management and expertise. It's the net training, the net fielding, and then it's the follow-on maintenance. And so in the terms of the pricing and availability, for example, an Echo model, roughly $43 million. A Mike model, roughly $20 million. You understand that in a life cycle maintenance of that aircraft from cradle to grave, that is only 25% of the total cost that will be invested in that piece of aircraft or that FMS or the aircraft for the life of it. Because all that money, really 75% of the total cost is into maintaining that piece of kit. So it's critical that you start off correctly by having the program management office put everything into place to set up a successful program. It is competitive pricing, and it's the total package approach. It's turnkey. And sometimes, if there's issues at all, you always have one person to be able to go back to, and it makes it much easier. Slide. So again, these are the keys to it. It's expertise, it's cost, it's logistics, and it's the complete package. Slide, please. All right, now, fielding equipment while training the force. Here's been the challenge, is while we have been fielding this equipment, while the construction of these facilities have taken place, while all of this is occurring in Saudi Arabia, these dedicated soldiers are down on the flight line flying and training every day. They're going through flight school in Australia and also at Fort Rucker. Then they're coming back and they're doing their advanced training there in country. And right now they've just finished doing high altitude training, some phenomenal training down in Taif. They've done multiple gunneries. I mean, these guys are all doing this simultaneous training while we get our little birds next month. So we get the H-6Is delivered next month. Those pilots have been out at Yuma doing training, doing gunnery out at Yuma, and now they're coming back in to receive those aircraft. So you can imagine it's quite the challenge to be able to, again, build an organization, field an organization, simultaneously train an organization. And looking to the future, because that's just 1st Brigade. You still have to look forward to your 2nd and your 3rd Brigade, and then your training brigade. All of that coming together. And you have to lay the groundwork. So a new equipment fielding, the aviation, and it's not just about, again, currency. We all know, all right? H-64, it doesn't matter. H-64, we all have complex aircraft. Currency does not equate to proficiency. So they understand that this organization is flying as many hours as they can to make sure that it's not just currency, it's proficiency. All right, continuation training in their aircraft, and then MOS-specific training. Getting back to, it's not just about, remember, it's all about the maintenance. So it's about the rotor system. It's about getting engine mechanics. It's about we're pulling our first phase right now in a H-64. And I'll tell you what a learning experience for the soldiers in Sang to be down there, pulling that aircraft apart and seeing at it, because there's no better way to learn than get out of the classroom and actually turn the wrench on the aircraft. And they're doing that right now. They've already finished their first UH-60 phase, and they did that about 2 months ago. Aerial gunnery. Ray, how many have we done now? 3? 3 aerial gunneries, very successful, and looking forward to when the H-6Is get in there to also do their gunnery, because they'll be armed up with a variety of different weapon systems. Now, institutional training timeline, typically it's about 24 months, because the Sang officers or Sang, not just officers, the students, they have to go through the English training, English language training, and then they go into their cycle training, whether it's at Eustis or Fort Rucker or in Australia, and then they'll come back and complete their training. So for officers, it's about 24 months, and for enlisted, it's about 15 months, which is, that added piece is the English language training. Slide. All right, so what are the accomplishments so far? And then we can get into a little Q&A about right on time. So again, right now, the 1st Brigade is being not just fielded. They just finished high altitude training. They did fast rope. They did fries and spries. They did pinnacle landing. All of this out there in Taif, which is high altitude training, and it's an excellent training facility. And working with their special forces. Their intent is they're moving out, procuring 2 additional brigades. We do a program management review and if you ever start a program like this, you have to constantly look at both your timelines. Are things coming in on time? Are they late? How should you adjust your program management? Because all of it has to be synced. So we do that. We typically do it once a year. We found that we just did a mini one last week because as things sometimes move so rapidly, you have to make some quick decisions in the program. The individual training, again, the slings, the hoist, CASEVAC, the FLIR they have is excellent. The Night Sun system they have, working on the, again, you don't think about some of this stuff on the logistics, FARP capability. You've got to have the ability to refuel your aircraft, not just at home station, but in other locations. So that's a whole nother aspect to the training. That says 2 aerial gunneries because we actually just finished one recently, and that one turned out that was probably the best one yet. Multiple airframe gunneries, and then the potential company task force doing a readiness exercise to get them be prepared to do something if they're asked to do something within country. And then I'll tell you the first initial real air-ground integration exercise was back in December, and then based on that success, what we did last week in TIFE was an everyday exercise with one of their brigades there and doing that air-ground integration. As we all know, just like General Gaylor and General Gabrins have been saying, it's all about supporting the soldiers on the ground. And you're always there to support them, and that's what you exist for. So getting that training and getting that integration early is key to success. Slide. All right, so what we're going to try to do in the future is get that company task force ready to go in case they're called to do something out there to help support the kingdom. Build a collective training plan, not just internally within the brigades, but also the brigades to work with those ground maneuver units. We'll be finishing the H6I and the fielding for the 1st Brigade by the end of May. And then basically continue to groom and grow because, frankly, there's a lot of folks that want to join the SANG Aviation, and it is a very popular organization, and we just want to continue, one, to grow the very professional organization, continue to build that organization, its professionalism, and then, therefore, when they're called to support anything in country, they're prepared to do so. So again, it's been my honor today to stand up here and talk about this phenomenal organization, and it's my honor to be able to work with these great soldiers every day. And it's not just within our organization, but again, I'm honored to be part of and to be a brother of all of the SANG soldiers in this great organization. So, having said that, I got about 10 minutes if anybody has any questions. And we have a lot of people here that can help too, so thank you. Okay, so Darab, right now, and I was literally just there last week. So the question was, what's the timeline? What's the timeline and the vision on Darab? So the timeline right now is just there last week. It's at 43%. Typical construction, again, didn't know any of this last year. I'm learning it in this job. You typically get about 3 to 4% of construction completion a month. And so that facility is about a $300 million facility, and we expect it to be done probably spring of 18, maybe fall of 18, be complete. Because right now, all the vertical construction is in process, and about half of it's complete. They don't want to lay the runways or the taxiways or the training lanes, and that's going to be one of the last things they want to do. You can imagine you just don't want a lot of construction equipment driving over all those lanes. So anyway, it's probably late 18. Now, what is the intent? I'll tell you what the intent is to have a center of excellence just like Fort Rucker right there at Darab that has the same capability, the same level of standards, of discipline, that you would see no difference between a pilot being trained at Fort Rucker or a pilot being trained in Darab. And by the way, so all that training is not just IPs. It's a combination. So we have instructor pilot that are SANG H-64 instructor pilots, Mike model SANG instructor pilots, but we also have our guys within the uniform side, and then Vanel contractors, and they use besides Vanel contractors, and they've got S-cubed folks up there too. All do a great job, to include manning our simulators. Jen. Yeah, so the question is, what's the max capacity? I'd have to probably, I'm going to do a ROM, rough order of magnitude on that. Well, you think about it, how many stage fields does Fort Rucker have? I mean, just basing alone, they're based out of 3 different locations, and then the stage fields are just, there's so many to choose from. So really, this would end up being one location that you could base out of. Now, there's no reason why you couldn't fly down to Kaj and do some other training down there. So you have some growth if you had to surge. So you could typically, if it takes about, if we, from the ground up, a similar model to Fort Rucker of about a year, because you may not, with the English language training, you're probably talking 50 to 100, okay? That's what I would guess. Now, again, but remember, that Center of Excellence is also doing all of the stuff Fort Eustis does, too, because we can't forget about that, because basically those organizations go hand in hand. Now, if you had to, there's another facility down in Cosmolan that is also they're using that right now until Darab is complete. Very good capability there, too, both classrooms, simulators, and everything like that. So you could actually have another, Fort Rucker, you've got Hanchey, all right, that has certain types of aircraft, and then you've got, Lowell that's got a certain type. You could potentially do something like that gives you a greater capacity if you needed it. So there's growth too. But good question. All right. Oh, yes, Fred.
Yeah, so is the intent to outfit this organization with U.S. compatible, equipment and someday maybe be able to do combined operations, or is this a separate and distinct organization?
No, I think, matter of fact, the RCENT commander came through and asked that very thing about being able to potentially bring in American forces to potentially train together and work together. I think that would be a great opportunity. I cannot speak for the government of Saudi Arabia or the leadership. But I just think anytime any partner that is joined together, and as we have been for years, that has an opportunity to train together, absolutely. We would, and there's a cab sitting right now in Kuwait as part of Spartan Shield. And so there's elements within the region that if that is an opportunity that's afforded itself, I think it would be great. Well, if there's no more questions, on behalf of Prince Midtab, who I answer to in country, and General Rashid, again, he is not just my friend, he is my brother, and this entire great crew that we work with, both on the U.S. side and the Saudi side, thank you for this opportunity, and masalama.